Thank you for joining us on This Week in Turkey. I am Murat Tursan. Tonight, President Erdoğan has a busy week. The central bank cuts the rates again. Iranian women protest the death of Masha Amini in Istanbul. Conservatives protest the LGBTI+ community. And Istanbul's mayor is under indictment looking at prison time if convicted. But it's not what you think. But our main story tonight, President Erdoğan has had a full agenda. Erdoğan has addressed the international community in the United Nations headquarters in Midtown Manhattan, where he praised Turkey's achievements, everything from the Turkish COVID vaccine to securing the safe passage of grain ships coming from Ukraine. But he did not forget to call Greece tyrannical in the process. But why President Erdoğan was really stateside was he wanted to talk about that F-16 deal Turkey had been trying to close. Turkey was ejected from the F-35 program last year for buying S-400 surface-to-air missile systems from Russia. Uncontent, Turkey instead asked for F-16s for the billions it had already paid for the purchase. Now, this wouldn't have been a big deal if President Erdoğan hadn't attended the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit days earlier and expressed interest in joining the club. The SCO is composed of several nations, but most notably Russia, China, and Iran, countries that the United States calls near-peer adversaries. That's military speak for countries that I consider threats. Why President Erdoğan would do this days before going to the US to ask for a fighter deal? Uncertain. It really doesn't look like the most potent move. Well, former Turkish ambassador to the United States, Faruk Loğoğlu, will be with us in just a little moment, and we'll ask him what he thinks about this whole situation. But let's get the details first.
President Erdoğan has had a full agenda this week. Ahead of his visit to New York to attend the UN General Assembly, the president signaled that Turkey may be interested in a membership in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The SCO is a Eurasian political, economic, and security alliance. The SCO's notable members include Russia, China, Iran, and India. During the summit, Erdoğan reiterated Turkey's position on the Russia-Ukraine war and added that Turkey was continuing its efforts to usher a diplomatic solution to end the hostilities as soon as possible. Erdoğan went on to signal that Turkey was ready to cooperate with the SCO. From security, economic, energy, transportation, agriculture to tourism, we are ready to cooperate in all areas. This Sunday, upon his arrival to the US, President Erdoğan strolled through Central Park and met with New Yorkers. Despite his numerous meet and greets, however, Erdoğan did not have a one-on-one with US President Joe Biden.
We'll hear an address by His Excellency Recep Tayyip Erdoğan, President of the Republic of Turkey.
On Tuesday, President Erdoğan addressed the United Nations in New York. During the address, President Erdoğan scolded Greece for sinking migrant and refugee boats.
We can clearly see that the Greeks are becoming much more tyrant towards the refugees around the Aegean Sea and Eastern Mediterranean in a very tyrant fashion, turning the Aegean into a graveyard for refugees. Last week, a 9-month-old, a baby called Asım, and a 4-year-old Abdul Wahab have lost their lives because that the Greek Coast Guard forces sank their boats.
Meanwhile, as Erdoğan alluded to Turkey's prospective SCO membership, he also reaffirmed Turkey's interest in completing the F-16 sale from the United States. The Turkish premier spoke to Senator Lindsey Graham and Chris Coons reportedly concerning the F-16 deal Turkey has been trying to secure since its ejection from the F-35 program. On Wednesday, Erdoğan spoke to Reuters' Hümeyra Pamuk about the potential F-16 deal.
You met with senators about the F-16 sale. How would you evaluate the meeting?
It was positive.
Are you going to be meeting with Biden?
I will attend the reception.
Would you like to have met with Biden?
Why?
A one-on-one?
He is Biden, I am Erdoğan.
Amerikan ve Türk iş dünyasının kıymetli
Upon ending his visit, President Erdoğan spoke to the Turkey-US Business Council, and during the preceding press conference, Erdoğan said, "We are interested in purchasing F-16s. We have had multiple positive meetings about this with President Biden. I am hoping that we will soon achieve results in this matter. We didn't have a chance to speak at length at the reception, but perhaps we will have a chance to discuss this over the phone later."
Joining me now, former Turkish ambassador to the United States, Mr. Faruk Loğoğlu. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure. Mr. Ambassador, I'd like to start with the most puzzling question. President Erdoğan has attended the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit right before arriving in the United States. Clearly, the West and the SCO stand on the opposite sides of the geopolitical spectrum. But then he arrives in the U.S., speaks to senators about that F-16 deal, says it all went very well. He's asking for fighter jets from the U.S., but seems to get a warm response from Shanghai. I am utterly confused. What is your take on the situation? What's going on here? Does Erdoğan have a strategy, and do you expect it to work?
Well, I'm not less confused than you. I think it's very puzzling. It's bad timing because attending the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and not just that, but also publicly declaring that Turkey's aim is to join that organization, I think created negative waves, not just in the West, but also NATO and especially the United States. And the timing was also wrong because I think President Erdoğan had high expectations for a meeting, face-to-face meeting with President Biden. But that didn't happen. I think the reasons go a little bit beyond his coming with the wrong outfit of Shanghai Cooperation Organization to New York. I think President Biden also has his own concerns. Midterm elections are coming up, and I think given the opposition to Turkey, not just over F-35, F-16 aircraft, but also the support for Armenian allegations and the Armenian position. I think President Biden didn't want to risk the Armenian and Greek lobbies' support in the upcoming elections in the United States.
Right. So the Democrats in the upcoming midterms are expected to lose the House, but keep the Senate, and the presidency is secure for now. But you're saying this is because of optics for domestic politics. But in actuality, the Biden administration has been rather receptive to selling F-16s to Turkey. Do you think that is still an ongoing plan?
Well, I think that is what the administration keeps messaging to President Erdoğan, I guess, because that's what President Erdoğan says, that things are fine, things are progressing well. But that's not what we hear from the U.S. Congress, and that is not what also we hear. We are not hearing strong messages of support from the Biden administration. They said, we are in favor of selling these F-16 aircraft as Turkey requested, asked, but they are not really doing much vis-a-vis the Congress, where the opposition is getting not just strong, but stronger. Every time President Erdoğan says things are going well on the F-16 axis, the opposition in the U.S. Congress hardens. And I think without the congressional approval, the administration position on the F-16 sale does not count for much.
I see. And finally, Mr. Ambassador, now, President Erdoğan going to Shanghai Cooperation Summit, then coming in the United States, do you think this was a veiled threat to the U.S., saying that if you don't sell me F-16, I'll take my ball and go home? Because he has done this before. He's went and purchased S-400 systems when he didn't get his way. Do you think this is something similar?
Well, that's what President Erdogan may be contemplating in his mind, but that's not what's going to happen because joining the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, there are conditions, and I think President Putin made it clear that you cannot belong to a military alliance if you want to join the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and Turkey is a member of NATO. Sure, I think Turkey should keep good relations, be in touch with various organizations, including the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in the East and in the Pacific and in Asia. But they should not take away, undermine its ties, its anchoring in the West, particularly in NATO. So I think President Erdogan's message is mixed. When it's mixed, when it's not clear, it works to his disadvantage, not only in Washington, but also in Moscow and in China.
I see. Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for breaking it down. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for being able to join us tonight.
Thank you, my dear friend. Thank you for having me.
And in the economy, the central bank continues President Erdogan's unorthodox monetary policies. The central bank cut its policy rate yet another 100 basis points this week, despite Turkey's very precarious economic predicament. Let's take a look at the latest hit the lira took after the central bank's announcement. As you can see, the lira has suffered another hit after the announcement, and this is not an isolated incident. This happened every single time the central bank has cut interest rates since late last year. Just to remind folks, Turkey is suffering from 80% or 180% inflation, depending on who you believe. Because as the world's central banks are hiking interest rates to combat inflation, Turkey is doing the exact opposite. See, when central banks want to curb inflation, one of the tools they have at their disposal is hiking policy rates. That reduces access to cheap money and then curbs demand, thereby reducing inflation and protects the value of the currency. At least that's the theory. However, President Erdogan has a different theory, one which has arguably half the value of the lira and exploded inflation since last year. Now, it is unclear as to why President Erdogan is so adamant about reducing interest rates, but here's a recap of what's been happening since late last year.
Despite Turkey's fragile economy and deteriorating currency, the central bank once again appears to have gotten back on its trend of cutting interest rates. The central bank reduced the policy rate 100 basis points from 13% to 12% yesterday. The decision reflected on the value of the lira coming from a high of 18.27 to the dollar. The lira hit 18.38 after the decision, losing 10 cents of value. Despite taking yet another hit from the central bank's announcement, the lira's devaluation has been inconsequential compared to its depreciation at the onset of President Erdogan's unorthodox economic policies. In February of 2021, as a response to the COVID crisis, then Central Bank President Naci Ağbal increased the policy rate from 17% to 19% to stop the lira's devaluation. In April, Ağbal was replaced by Şahap Kavcıoğlu by the Turkish president and began reducing interest rates in September. In October, the lira had fallen from 7.49 down to 9.28. The central bank once again slashed the rates from 16% to 15% and then to 14%. By November, the lira had hit 16.55 to the dollar. In December, President Erdogan announced the Treasury's currency fluctuation deposit accounts, where depositors would be reimbursed for whatever losses they would incur against the dollar, recovering 3 liras of value. However, now in September, as the central bank has continued to shed interest rates, the lira is at a new low, surpassing its lowest point since the announcement of the savings account scheme. And protests in Iran are still ongoing after Masha Amini's death.
Masha Amini, a 22-year-old Iranian woman, died September 16th after being detained by the officers of the Guidance Patrol, commonly referred to as the Morality Police. Amini was detained for not wearing her hijab up to government standards. Amini died in police custody 3 days after her detention. The police had said that she had suffered a heart attack and suddenly fell to the ground, but leaked medical scans of Amini indicated that she had suffered a cerebral hemorrhage and a stroke. Eyewitnesses had reported that Amini was beaten and her head hit the side of the police vehicle as she was being taken into custody. A series of protests broke out over Amini's death on September 17th in her hometown. Soon after, the protests spread to multiple major cities in Iran and around the world. And Istanbul was no exception. On Wednesday, hundreds gathered in front of the Iranian consulate in Istanbul to protest the Iranian government. Medyascope was on the scene.
الان دارن تو ایران کشته میشن برای آزادی برای آزادی دختر 22 ساله رو زدن تو سرش رفت تو کما مرد خانواده همه تو ایران عزا دارن یک به یک همه جوونا جونشون رو گرفتن کف دستشون.
Now our president, our terrorist president rises in New York, and I just want to know why America gave him visa to go to the United States, the land of freedom. Our president is in New York in the United Nations right now. They should be our voice. They should ask all the governments in the world, all them, to arrest Raisi right now because he is terrorist. He killed more than 1,000 people. I don't know, millions of people in Iran.
Because it's not just about the death of a person. I mean, it's important. It caused all of this. But I think the most important thing is that we are sick of it. Me as an Iranian, I'm sick of it, and we want to change the regime. And this is what we want, and this is what's important to all of us.
And would you say that what you're feeling here today, what these people are feeling, is a common sentiment in Iran?
Oh, definitely. Like more than 80% of people have the same idea as me, and it's been 43 years of misery and just terrible governing over my country, and this regime should definitely go away.
Alright, so can you tell us a little bit about why you're here today?
Actually, I'm here to exercise my right about this fascist regime which has the right to kill people for nonsense reasons, for veil, for hijab, which is not even issued in Islam. We are living in Turkey right now. It's an Islamic country, majority of the country of Muslims, but you don't see such things, that people getting beaten, morality police stops you. Why are you drinking? Why are you doing that? So they are pushing their lifestyle onto people, and it's been for 40 years. 40 years since the revolution, and people are just saying enough is enough.
And in domestic news, thousands of conservatives gathered in Istanbul's Fatih district last Sunday to protest LGBTI plus themes in mass media. The group had several gripes, from LGBTI plus themes in media to erosion of gender and imposing of corrupt values on children to threatening the traditional family structure. Needless to say, there were also ample religious themes present. Now, what really made the gathering controversial was that the group that had organized the gathering put out a video calling people to attend. But the government gave that video a public service announcement status, encouraging TV channels to air it as to be able to maximize the attendance. But despite this, some attendees say that not enough people showed up. Media was, of course, kept at arm's length. The police shooed us away as soon as we got there and really discouraged any interviews. But we did manage to score a few. Here's a short clip of what we did down there.
Müslüman için sadece ibadet etme dönemi değil, artık Müslüman için uyanma, harekete geçme, iradesiyle ortaya koyma, duasında, kınamasında, eğitiminde, dik duruşunda, içinden kınayarak, dışından söyleyerek savaşma zamanı.
Çocuklarımızın geleceği için, çocuklarımız için buradayız. Çocuklarımızın cinsiyetine müdahaleye kesinlikle karşıyız. Dinimiz de buna karşı. Buna karşı dik duruş sergilemek için buradayız.
Mutluyum burada olduğum için. Burada olduğumuz için karı koca buradayız ve kesinlikle sonuna kadar savunuyoruz. Arkasındayız. Çok mutluyum burada olduğum için.
Bugün gerçekten burada olmamız gereken bir yer. Burada küresel çetelere ve aile yapımızı bozmak isteyen LGBT unsurlarına karşı biz buradayız, size geçit vermeyeceğiz demek istiyoruz. O yüzden devletimizin ve milletimizin her zaman aile yapımızın arkasındayız ve bugün de burada olmaktan gurur duyuyoruz.
LGBT süreci fıtrata, İslam'a ve kulluğa aykırıdır. Biz bunun karşısında durmak için bugün buraya geldik. Bugün buradayız. İnşallah biraz hareket bekliyoruz ki karşı taraf korksun. Hangi tarafta, hangi safta olduğumuz belli olsun. Kimin burada ne yapacağı belli olsun.
Biz LGBT'ye karşı yürüyoruz.
Transfersiz olur mu?
Bunu kabul etmediğimiz için yürüyoruz. Ailenin birliği ve devamı için yürüyoruz.
Bir vatandaşın tek başına kamil bir insan olduğu örneğini gösteremezsiniz. Bizi zifir...
Bu melunlara, bu sapkınlara hiçbir surette adım atma imkanı dahi verilmesin. Temennimiz odur. Çünkü ciddi anlamda gençlik sıkıntıya giriyor. Ailelerimiz sıkıntıya giriyor. Yani devletimizin beka projesi yani burada bir ön planda. Çünkü devletin de bir beka sorunu var. Baktığımız zaman Müslümanların iktidarı ne zamana kadar devam edecek? Yetişen gençlik ortada. Yani böyle sapkın bir gençliğin yetiştirilmesi, bunun önünün alınması aslında devletin de bir noktada beka sorunu manasına gelir.
Çok güzel bir buluşmaydı. Yani aslında daha çok katılım olabilirdi, daha çok bekliyoruz ama insanlarımız duyarsız bu konuda. İnşallah bir dahaki sefere daha çok oluruz. Çok güzel gençlerimiz var. Hiçbir zaman kötülük iyiliğe galip gelemeyecek. Her zaman kötülük yenilmeye mahkumdur.
Burada bulunmak zorundayız. Herkes bulunmak zorunda. Görüşlerimiz farklı olsa da hepimiz burada bugün de buluşmak zorundayız. Çünkü evlatlarımızın geleceği için buna ihtiyacımız var.
Bugün biz hiçbir nefret söyleminde bulunmadık. Kişileri hedef almadık. Haklı talebimizi nefret söylemi diye çarpıtmaya çalıştılar.
And in domestic news, Istanbul's mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu, is under fire by the government. İmamoğlu is being sued by the High Election Council for calling them fools. Not joking. His indictment just came down, and the High Election Council is demanding 15 months to 4-year prison term for Istanbul's mayor. Not for corruption, not for theft, not for embezzlement or anything like that, but for calling them fools for overturning the 2019 mayoral election. And it wasn't even İmamoğlu that started the beef. It was Interior Minister Süleyman Soylu, who is famously a bigwig in the ruling party and the government. See, in Turkey, you can't just say whatever you want. Turkey has some very broad language policing laws that the government leverages pretty frequently. But why İmamoğlu? It would be speculation, but most say because İmamoğlu won Istanbul after almost a quarter century of AKP rule. İmamoğlu is a household name in Turkey, but he is from the opposition. The political conventional wisdom in Turkey is whoever wins Istanbul wins Turkey. So the sooner İmamoğlu is gotten rid of, the better for the AKP. The hearing is currently postponed, and we surely don't know how it is going to turn out. But here is what we have so far.
An indictment has been filed against Ekrem İmamoğlu, mayor of Istanbul and possible contender in the 2023 presidential race. The indictment demands 15 months to 4 years of prison time for İmamoğlu on the grounds of insulting the High Election Council in 2019. The High Election Council is suing Imamoglu for calling them fools after the 2019 Istanbul municipal election. In 2019, the ballots cast at the Istanbul municipal election were annulled by the authorities upon complaints filed by AKP, despite Imamoglu securing a narrow victory. The Istanbul residents cast their votes again in June, handing Imamoglu a firm 10-point victory over his rival. In response to the recall, Imamoglu filed a complaint with the European Parliament for election fraud. The Minister of Interior Süleyman Soylu called him a fool for doing so. When Imamoglu responded by saying, "The true fools were the election council," he was prosecuted. Imamoglu's hearing has been postponed to November of this year. The Istanbul Criminal Court has already preemptively banned all demonstrations outside of the courthouse prior to the hearing. Imamoglu commented on the matter and said, "This is a case that should not be. They say that the case has to be postponed to examine the evidence and hear witness testimony. But unfortunately, this is a case that should have never been. This is nothing more than a waste of time."
And with that, that's it for us on This Week in Turkey. I have Murat Tursan. A special thanks to Mehmet Tanverdi for helping me with news text, and Kathleen Phelps for voiceovers, and much, much more. And folks, if you like this content, please don't forget to subscribe, give us a like, hit that bell icon, support us on Patreon if you can. Try and give us a leg up because we are a new channel, but we are shooting for the moon. And thank you for joining us.